This is the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by TheHoosier.com. Welcome in, everyone. We're back for another edition of TheHoosier.com postgame wrap-up. Indiana basketball, just, I don't even know how to put it, just an embarrassing effort, embarrassing loss to Kentucky, 72-60. Kyler, you're in Rock right now. Initial takeaways for you, immediately following this game.
Yeah, first of all, apologies for the background noise. Rupp Arena is bumping 24/7, and I swear that they did not have a silence button at all in this arena. But anyway, I thought the first half Indiana played pretty well. Now, a lot of that was due to Kentucky shooting it poorly. They had a lot of chances at the free throw line. So did Indiana. But the big difference was Kentucky wasn't taking advantage of the free throw opportunities where Indiana was. I think at half they were like 18 of 19. Indiana was at the stripe, and Kentucky had missed like 7 or 8 or something like that. But second half starts, Lamar Wilkerson, there's a lot of fouls. And the thing is there's a lot of fouls with this team, but like every player that Indiana plays, this may sound like a kind of a stupid statement, but every player that Indiana plays is such a key part because they just don't have depth. So when they get in foul trouble, it really shakes things up for Indiana that they really just can't bounce from. And obviously, Lamar Wilkerson had 3 fouls in the first half. He set the 7 minutes left or somewhere around there. And then, he picks up his 4th foul right at the beginning, I think it was like the 17:50 mark or something like that. And he sets most of the second half. So there goes your best player. There goes your shooter, the one guy that you can trust to make down the outside shots. And there goes your kill shot threat a little bit. So you throw in the fact that Indiana just got out-toughed in the second half, even though Kentucky was still struggling to make some shots. They ended up, making the right plays at the right time. They got the momentum, and Indiana just doesn't have the horses, the stamina to run with these types of guys. So they ended up losing by 12 points. So just kind of a disappointing effort there, the last half of the second half especially.
Yeah, it was a 12-point loss, but it felt like a lot more. It was 12 points was probably about as close as this game could have been. You look at Kentucky missing 13 free throws. They were 20% from 3. Yeah, Indiana struggled from 3 too. But 18 turnovers, the most Indiana's had in a game all year. I think 8 assists might be the least amount of assists they've had in a game all year. But just looking at the second half, easily the worst half of basketball. We've seen this team play all year. I don't think it's close. Just a couple key stats from the second half. Indiana had 6 made field goals, 12 turnovers, just 3 assists. Kentucky had 18 points off turnovers in the second half. That's been one of Indiana's biggest strengths all year. They got dominated that point. 23 points off turnovers for Kentucky, just 6 for Indiana. Indiana, who's been awesome at forcing turnovers all year, only forced 4. Kentucky did a really good job of taking care of the basketball. I want to pull up the second half. Just 1 second half turnover for Kentucky compared to 12 for Indiana. That's about as glaring of a difference. You don't see it. You're never going to win a game when you have 12 turnovers and your opponent has 1. It's just not going to happen.
Especially at Rupp Arena, one of the hardest places to play in college basketball. But you mentioned turnovers. That was the live ball turnovers. That was pretty much kind of the game in a way. And I don't want to completely throw him under the bus, but Tate Conaway, he's got to be better at taking care of the ball. It's that simple. You have the ball in your hand 75% of the time. You're the one that, Coach Fabrice trusts to initiate that offense and get going. You're our only really true point guard on this team. You've got to be better at taking care of the ball, and you got to be a little bit more aggressive at times consistently. He had a couple of drives to the basket, but it just looked like he didn't know what he was going to do with it when he got there. Just a lot of really silly passes and a lot of passed up shots from Indiana's backcourt a little bit as well. It just came down to toughness, I felt like, in the second half. And I think if Indiana could have continued to make shots and, kind of keep their confidence going a little bit, and not take, once, Kentucky threw that kind of punch that kind of got them, to that 5-point lead, and they just kept pouring on there. It was just pretty evident that Indiana was not going to have the guys to match him. And it's just frustrating because I think Kentucky, I don't think that they're a super high caliber team. Like, I don't think that they're world beaters by any chance. Like, they're going to be an NCAA tournament team. They'll figure it out, but they're not a good shooting team. And it was just kind of the mental tough plays that really just changed the game for Indiana. And, Indiana could have stayed in it if they would have, kind of locked in a little bit, kind of controlled their fouling that they had, and could have hit some shots. But yeah, it just came down to Kentucky. Once they got that momentum, Indiana didn't have anything left in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana got punked in the second half. It really, I mean, Kentucky played physical and Indiana had no answers. And, the fouls, you can look at Lamar Wilkerson, that stretch. Kentucky, I think, had a 17-2 run where Indiana, desperately needed Wilkerson on the floor, but with 4 fouls, Darren DeVries didn't risk it. And it's that's a tough decision. And ultimately, he might look back and be like, yeah, I probably should have brought Wilkerson back in. But then if Wilkerson comes back in the 12-minute mark and picks up a quick foul, it's like, oh, why did you do this? So it's a tough decision, but the Indiana offense was bad today. I mean, we've kind of said it all year. When you look at this team, the way it's constructed, the way they play, they're capable of beating anyone when the threes are falling. But when they're not, they're capable of losing to anyone. They're capable of some really bad performances. And tonight was one of those nights. I mean, 4 for 24 from 3. You look at Tucker DeVries, 1 for 9 from 3. I know he finished with 15 points, but 4 turnovers from him. Connerway, you mentioned 4 turnovers. Sam Alexis, 3 turnovers. Really, just such a frustrating game to watch. And then Lamar Wilkerson finally comes back in the game after, sitting for much of the second half. And it was just frustrating for me watching as, your best scorer, the only one who had really had a, decent game offensively up until that point. And just Indiana couldn't get him any looks, touches. And it's like you're risking him out there with 4 fouls. You might as well try to get him the ball and try to, because what's the point of risking him with 4 fouls if you're not going to, play through him and try to get him looks?
Right. You don't want to be timid by any stretch of the means. You know what I mean? So a lot of this, too, and I know I'm kind of jumping the gun on the point here a little bit, but it's just a lot of this comes down to roster construction. And I think we've kind of stated it. This team, the way this team was built and the lack of front court that they have, they were going to rely heavily on the 3 ball. And I think, during Coach DeVries' tenure in Indiana, I think that's always going to hold true. They're going to rely heavily on the 3 ball. That's what he wants to do. But it's pretty evident that you don't have a front court to fall back on. And I think you need a really good front court to fall back on. And Reed Bailey has not been great this season at all. I think there's been maybe 2 games where you can say, you know what, good job, Reed Bailey, you did good. But you can tell he's very hesitant on the floor. He does not like physicality at all. The only time he is effective is when he's in the high post and he's finding cutters or he's slipping for screens for wide open layups. That is it. And then Sam Alexis is their only consistent big. And he had a struggle night as well. It's a recipe for disaster if you're not hitting the 3 ball. That's just as simple as it is for this team. Yeah, they can compete better on the defensive end. They could be a little bit more tougher when it comes to that. These guys could quit being a little bit. I think a lot of times these guys are a little bit too scared of the moment in a way, which causes them to play a little bit tight. So, it's frustrating because the roster is what it is right now. You can't change it right now, and there's very little right now that you can do to get the most out of this roster. You really wish that you could play both Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis together, but that's just probably never going to happen. I mean, it's very, very obvious that they can't do that. It just is what it is. So they're going to struggle against long, athletic, playmaking teams that can be physical as well. They're going to struggle with those guys, and there's a lot of Big Ten teams like that. So Indiana's got a couple more games to kind of get it corrected a little bit. I think they got Chicago State next or whatever, so that'll obviously be a bye game that they'll pounce on. But it was overall a brutal last 2 weeks for Indiana. You found out a lot about this team. They went 1-3 in 4 very important games. They got big wins over Marquette, Kansas State that aren't probably going to look that great on the NCAA tournament resume. So they're going in. If there's a team in the Big Ten that's going to rely heavily on making noise in the Big Ten, it's Indiana, and they're going to have to. So it's frustrating because I felt like Indiana could have won this game tonight based on how they were playing in that first half and how Kentucky was playing. But you just got to have a mental toughness to them. And right now, Indiana's just not mentally tough yet. I do think that Coach Breeze will eventually get guys that will be mentally tough. But right now, it is what it is right now, and there's not really much you can kind of do about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's this, Indiana gets punched and they don't have a response for it. We saw it tonight. We saw it against Minnesota, down the stretch, you need to, play your best, and Indiana hasn't done that. Now is, if I'm not mistaken, so it's two or three, you can count games you've had like against Power 5 competition where, Indiana had a chance to win maybe down the stretch if they can make plays, and all three times. Louisville, you got the game down to single digits, never was able to do anything with it. Minnesota couldn't do anything. And then tonight, I think it was a 7-point game with 4 minutes left. Nothing. I think they scored 2 more points the rest of the game, if I'm not mistaken. It was 65-58, and just no field goals the last 3:42. I mean, Indiana, when you look at, how this team's built the strengths coming into tonight, it was their ability to force turnovers, share the ball, like high assist numbers, low turnovers on offense in the 3-ball. They had a ton of turnovers. I want to say I'm going to actually get it exactly. Yeah, the least amount of assists they've had in a game by 5. Most turnovers they've had in a game. Just a terrible shooting night. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. Indiana's lucky they only lost this game by 12 points the way they played.
Yep.
I mean, if you go through and look at the game, I mean, Kentucky shot 38% from the field, 20% from 3. If Kentucky just has an average shooting night, they win this game by 25 points at least. It was as bad of an Indiana performance like that second half as we've seen all year.
I think what you just said is pretty telling. If Kentucky has an average shooting night, they lose this game by 25 points. That just comes down to pure toughness. That's the last thing I'm going to say. It just comes down to pure toughness. That was the word of this post-recap, toughness. Indiana's got to figure out how to get tougher. They got to get smarter. They got to take care of the ball. They got to figure out something quick, see what works and what doesn't, because they're going to get in the Big Ten play. They're already lost the one really stinker of a game versus Minnesota. Their backs are up against the wall going into conference play, and that's just not a good thing to be in right now, especially for this team, right? Like this type of team right now.
I mean, and then you look at their next stretch. Chicago, they have a week off, then Chicago State and Siena, 2 games in 3 days, and then another more than a week off. I think 10 days between that and them restarting Big Ten play, Washington. Those practices, Indiana's going to have to figure something out. Like, what can they do to get the ship back on track? Because, yeah, you have Washington, Maryland, 2 winnable games open, but then you have Nebraska coming to Assembly, and Nebraska has been unbelievable, 11-0, just took down Illinois in their building. And then you go to Breslin. Yeah, Indiana beat Michigan State at, Breslin last year. Still one of the hardest places to play in the country, and this Michigan State team is also very good. But, Kyle, you got anything else?
Nope. I think we want to give one more shout-out real quick, right?
Yeah, something good, maybe something to be happy about for Indiana fans. Fernando Mendoza is, the Heisman winner. If you didn't see the speech because you were watching the game, we got it on the Hoosier website, so make sure you check that out, guys. It was I was remote, so I was watching it live as I was watching the game. That speech, pulling on the heartstrings. Just him talking about his mom, his brothers, his dad, his grandparents, you couldn't be happy for a guy because he is just he's such a likable guy. Like he cares so much, such a nice kid. Just really happy for Fernando and so deserving.
Yeah, it's truly special. Obviously, Indiana's got a big stretch coming up in the college football playoff. A lot of pressure, a little bit, for them to go win a national championship. But the fact that they got their very first Heisman and Kurt Cignetta's second year as Indiana head coach, and going to a guy like Fernando Mendoza, a guy that's just all about the right things, a work ethic, a personality, giving back to the community, a guy that, takes care of his family, a teammate. There's so many good things. You can list off 200 great things about Fernando Mendoza, and it still wouldn't be enough. And it was cool. It's just really cool to see that he had the season that he did. He led Indiana to what they are right now, and super congratulations to Fernando Mendoza. That's without a question the positive of tonight. And now Indiana's got 2 more weeks until they play again. So less than 2 weeks,
like 2.5.
2.5. Yeah, my weeks are all messed up. So
next Friday though, Oklahoma, Bama.
Yep, that's a game that Indiana fans all need to watch.
Yeah, we will see who, Indiana gets matched up with. And, until then, we're going to have you covered on the Hoosier for, everything you could need leading up in the college football playoff. Guys, sign up right now for just $1 for your first week. When you join, you get all the national stuff, recruiting insight. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Wilt Fong just made a prediction. I can't remember who, but IU's supposed to land predicted for a, top 4-star in the 2027 recruiting class for football. So, guys, you get all that stuff for just $1 when you first sign up. So make sure you do that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. We're going to have you covered for all these post-game wrap-ups. Hopefully some more positive ones in the future than today. But thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Hoosier.com post-game wrap-up. We'll be back with another one in a week.